Every third weekend in June, Winlock, Washington residents cluck about their exceptional town with Egg Days, a celebration of all things fowl, as in poultry. After all, this small Washington town was known as the egg capital of the world. Among other events, there's a parade, carnival, and egg salad sandwiches at the elementary school.
We boil, peel, and make egg salad out of over 60 dozen eggs. And so we have over 800 sandwiches that we're serving today on Egg Day. They are free to the public.
Visitors can also flock over to the Winlock History Museum and meet local good egg Paul Foster.
This has to do with the poultry industry, primarily the eggs. We wanted to specialize in photographs that had historical significance and also family histories and city history.
Or crack open more Winlock history at the Renegade Rooster and have your mind scrambled by curator Roy Richards' plethora of artifacts from his hometown.
This is a model train going through the town of Winlock, and the steam engines carrying the eggs and the chickens.
I got some of my historical stuff from my mom, and then I used to deliver newspapers to a man who had Winlock News. He gave me his negatives and he gave me his pictures, and I buy a lot of stuff off the internet.
No yoke. These guys know a lot about Egg Days.
1921 was the first celebration of Egg Day, and Poultry Day is what they called it. And then later it just became Egg Day.
Well, it's just to commemorate the poultry industry in Winlock.
And they had their first queen in 1937. 1941 was the first time they had Egg Day buttons. And this is a full set of the Egg Day buttons right here.
You can have all kinds of reasons to have a party once a year, and Egg Day was Winlock's.
And it won't ruffle their tail feathers if you ask about this Winlock monument.
In 1923, they were opening the Pacific Highway.
They opened a bridge from Washington to Oregon between Vancouver and Portland. It was such a big occasion that the communities in Washington put together a caravan of cars that would go down and drive over the bridge.
They had a parade, and Winlock figured that they should be in the parade.
And Winlock, thinking they wanted to be distinctive, made a big egg on the back of a truck and drove it down.
The first float was a canvas egg stretched over wood.
Someone thought, well, that was such a neat thing, no use throwing it away, and
they decided to keep it for Egg Day.
But it didn't last, and so they built another one.
And then the first permanent egg in town was a tin egg, but the tin didn't last long.
One egg they put together was rather streamlined, but more like a dirigible than an egg.
This is the biggest egg now, and this one was made in 1991. And they wanted to have Winlock known as the egg capital of the world.
Which came first to Winlock, the chicken or the egg? Neither. It was the fins.
The fins came in the early 1900s, and they saved this town of Winlock.
Winlock was settled in the first place by people who came to work in the big sawmills.
There was a lot of different logging and stuff around the Winlock area in the late 1890s and the early 1900s.
They had all this cut-over land, and people began to move to Winlock, first for the jobs, but then they could buy land very cheaply. And history says that there were 3 Finns.
In 1903, I believe.
And they came down looking for places that they could have a farm.
And they came over here on train to check out the area.
In a restaurant, they met J.A. Jack Vaness, who was the big mill owner, and in the conversation, he offered to sell them cut-over land.
And they bought off the logged-off land.
And they paid $60 for 40 acres of cut-over land.
And then they went back and they told all their buddies about the land.
They were well adapted to small farms, and they were able to sell eggs, and it became so profitable that Winlock became a poultry center.
Then in 1919, they built the co-op. It was all the farmers in the area, and all the people in the area were basically farmers.
Everyone that shipped eggs or bought feed from the co-op became a member, and you had to buy some stock.
And the logging industry was kind of going away, and so everybody had a chicken house, and everybody had a cow, and everybody had a garden, so they were all self-sufficient. Well, they all had too many eggs for their own use, so they made the money off the eggs.
About that same time, the railroads developed a refrigerated car. They put ice in.
And by the time of that first giant egg float, the people of Winlock, Washington really had something to crow about.
26,280,000 eggs they shipped off from Winlock to New York.
And it's unthinkable now, but a 40-acre farm could support a man and his wife and 4 kids, and they could live very well.
But there's a surprise under the shell of this poultry party. After years of poultry farms getting larger and larger,
Now there isn't hardly anybody around this area that raises eggs.
Very few people attending Egg Day that ever raised any eggs themselves.
In 1960s is when the co-op closed up.
We're flying under false colors, I guess, aren't we?
I can't really think offhand, were there any chicken barns?
Most of them have been torn down and burned up a long time ago. You couldn't rebuild the chicken industry in Winlock because somebody with a farm flock just couldn't compete. Wouldn't be possible.
so what keeps Egg Days clucking?
Pride, people get together, the class reunions come, people come to see each other and visit and talk about the good old days.
Well, I drive down the street and it crosses my mind that these are the same streets that I rode bicycles on when I was a kid, and it was a good time in my life.
And let's not rain on Winlock's parade. After all,
Gotta know where we come from before we know where we're going, right?
We're trying to figure out ways to rejuvenate the town. We can't try to start over with chickens, but somewhere there's some idea that somebody can use.
for industries, a small town like Winlock does have a feather in its cap.
I guess if they go to bigger places, there's more things they have to do for permits and restrictions and stuff than there would be in a small area.
And Winlock can always look to the Finns, who changed a logging town into a poultry center.
You had to be industrious or you would have never bought cut over land to start making a farm. I'd like to think of Winlock as Winlock still has a future.
Know of an interesting person or place in Washington that would make a good story? Drop us an email, faces@tvw.org.